Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for the 30-second delay. I wasn't sure I wanted to come out anymore, so I hope that was okay. How many people were here this morning for Marina's talk? Okay, that's a good section of you. For the rest of you, you missed a great show, you missed a great talk. In many ways, this talk will be the other half of Marina's talk, and there's a reason for that. Marina and I worked together for many years. She's one of the most generous, rewarding, educational partners I've ever worked with. So you'll see a lot of the flip side of what she was talking about. And like Marina, I will use videos to tell some of the stories. Unlike Marina, I will not dance on stage. This Nigerian doesn't do that Brazilian thing. What I want to talk about today is the heroic purpose of brands. And it's a simple thought, really simple thought, that the only purpose of a brand should be to make a hero, not of the brand, but of the customer. And I'm going to take you back to your high school classics and the story of Homer's Odyssey. And if you remember your classics, you'll know that that story has people like Zeus and people like Poseidon and Penelope, great Athena, great characters. And yet, who is the hero of the piece? It's Odysseus, this unpredictable, flawed, sometimes even mischievous character. Odysseus is really a prototype for me of the modern customer who is increasingly unpredictable, and yet the customer is the person that the brand needs to make a hero of. And if you think about how the practice of branding has changed in the last 20 years, we've gone from branding sitting at an intersection between, let's call it corporate strategy. We know where we're going, it's baked, and we have a 5-year plan. And the intersection of that with communication design. We're going to go away and we're going to craft a perfect expression of the promise that we need to give customers in order to achieve our ambition. And it was crafted within an inch of its life, inert, and put up there. Brands were about consistency and rules and guidelines. Well, we move into this world now, and of course that branding sits at a different intersection. It still is an intersection of corporate strategy, but that thing is inert. It's constantly responding to changes in the marketplace, to new data, to new competitors. And so organizations have learned how to think about corporate strategy as something that constantly changes. And the intersection isn't with communication design, this perfect craft that we used to be about. As Marina was alluding today, it's an intersection, I suspect the best phrase is with service design, with understanding the experience and responding to that experience as people's needs change, and as their experiences change, and as their hopes and dreams change. And so we start the branding process no longer with a perfect idea that we want to position an organization for. And if you think about that language, it was always in opposition to the customer. So we took a position, we ran campaigns, we defended that position, and we talked about our customers as targets. We put the word audience after it, but they were targets to be gone after. The world we live in now, we're much more in partnership with that user, with that customer, with society. And so the language that we all use, and not just in design and in branding, but frankly in business now, is the language of user experience, customer journeys, personas. And that's a great start point that has begun to change the way we start the design process. And so we now increasingly try and find ways to get into the customer's life and pull away the ways in which people have traditionally thought about the category we're operating in and find out something that is of real meaning to the customer. So for example, with our work with Orange, the question wasn't what do you want from a mobile phone company or from your tariff or from your minutes. The question is, what's essential to you?
We're a brand focused on what's essential to people. To know what's essential, we need to be close to our customers, in touch with their lives and what matters to them right now.
Qu'est-ce que ça fait bien, gars? Chciałam, żeby gdyby przycisnąć ten guzik w tym pudełeczku, żeby w tym momencie była cała kolejka ludzi, którzy chętnie by kupili kwiatki.
Dans mon travail, la manière de recevoir les données et de les traiter de manière la plus efficace et la plus intelligente possible.
J'aimerais mettre dans ma boîte tous mes souvenirs, donc photos et vidéos.
No podría vivir sin música, porque es la gasolina que necesito para mis estados de ánimo, para los momentos.
Yo es que la tenemos, lo que pasa es que no sabemos utilizarla él y yo. Tenemos que depender de mi hijo.
boîte bi moom bëgg naa mu dimbali ma mun a gérer sama xaalis yónnee ko mu gaaw wala ma jël ko mu gaaw wax dëgg yàlla mu dimbali.
بالكلام أنا خليني أتعلم الإنجليزية بسرعة.
I think after 1 month of traveling, I think that now I would like just to be with my family and friends.
Dans cette boîte-là, je mettrais tous ceux que j'aime. Qu'ils soient toujours près de moi, que je les ai toujours avec moi, et puis que je puisse être avec eux tout le temps. Voilà.
So how can we be essential to our customers? We have to find ways to get closer to them. Close enough to really listen. Close enough to know what's really important to them. So we can respond with what they need. So we can be useful. So we can be valuable. So we can be essential in their lives every day.
So this way of thinking, of course, allows us to think about the brand in much more human terms. And so instead of devices and minutes and tariffs, we can talk about the things people want to do. You want to take care of your family, you want to have fun, you want to understand technology. It's a good start point. However, I've become increasingly worried that over the last few years, as we've got better and better at thinking about and measuring the customer experience, that we're actually moving in the opposite direction, that we're beginning to get brands that say the same thing by categories. Because we've gotten so good at being able to go into the customer's life and measure things, brands increasingly are vanilla and are saying one of three things: faster, cheaper, simpler. And we're losing any form of magic that brands really should be about if they are about people. Because people are, as I talk about with Odysseus, these magical, mysterious, messy, unpredictable things. And when I think about that and compare it to, say, Hollywood, who manages to produce time after time things that resonate with us, the difference is clear. Is because when we watch a great movie, or when we get addicted to a great Netflix series, it's because there's something human, something about us that we recognize in that show. We can't make a cheaper, faster, simpler argument, but we can find something that resonates with us. And that's because Hollywood has based a lot of its work, particularly over the last 30 years, on the hero's journey, which I'm sure many of you know, the work that Joseph Campbell did in the 40s, which was rediscovered in the 80s, mostly by a guy called Christian Vogler in Hollywood, which really is the truth of the myths that endure. Because myths that endure, like Odysseus, like all Shakespeare's work, like the tortoise and the lion in parts of Africa where I come from, those myths speak to us as human beings. And Joseph Campbell's work, just really quickly, talks about the 12 steps that are common to every great myth, that it starts in the ordinary world, there's a call to adventure, there's a refusal or resistance to this call, you meet a mentor or some form of companion, there's a crossing of the threshold, the moment of difficulty, then you encounter tests, you have your allies, you have your enemies, there is an approach to the big throne, there is an ordeal where you fight, there is then a reward, but we're not over then, there is still the journey back. In that journey there is rebirth, transformation, there is a discovery of the elixir, and there is a return, always a return back to the ordinary world. And Hollywood has entertained us and engaged us for years on the back of that. And every myth, go to your, if whatever part of the world you are, look at the myths that have endured and they will have these elements. And I've been asking myself, and we're increasingly asking ourselves, can you think about brands in the same way? And when you think about it, there are so many parts of that story that are relevant and informative to brands. That brands have to be real. They have to make sense in our tangible, ordinary world. But they also have to call us to be our better selves. They have to tell us about things that are possible for us as individuals. They have to appreciate that we'll be reluctant, and so there is a conversation. Great brands have a conversation with us. They understand that we need to cross those thresholds. They understand that we will face tests and we'll face enemies, and so they have to understand their role as allies. Great brands understand that most of the things we do, we're not doing for functional reasons. We're doing because these are things that are meaningful, rich, deep to us. The previous speaker was talking about that. And at the end, great brands give us some transformational power that goes beyond the way we've thought about ourselves normally. And really that means that while we continue to exist in this natural, physical, tangible world with all our hassles, that these brands can bring a little bit of magic to that world. And so when Virgin Active says to us, how can we bring more excitement into the world of a spinning class, because people are beginning to lose interest, they begin to find other things. We don't just design a better spinning class, we say you've got to make not Virgin Active or the instructor the hero, you've got to make the people in the room the hero. So the idea for the pack is this notion that when you go into a class, it's no longer about an instructor telling you what to do, it's about your team, the pink team, racing against the clock to get ahead of the blue team. It's a series of gamified events that are displayed, and so it becomes about us, not about what we're being told to do, but what us as individuals are trying to do. So we love this notion that the hero story is this universal thing that we can all really relate to as people. It takes us away from just the simpler, faster, cheaper idea of thinking about brands and brings it something that is more human, and actually that is about making a hero of each of us. There is a question you might want to ask yourself, well, if I'm the hero, the customer, what does that leave the brand? Well, as we know from all our myths, all our heroes have companions and allies. Winnie the Pooh has Tigger. Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes has Hobbes. Batman has Robin and Alfred, and so on and so forth. And the role of the brand is as that ally next to the hero. And an ally is the person who takes that hero from the ordinary world and does something great with it. So if you think about the brands that are really beginning to capture our imagination, whether that's Skyscanner, not a brand we're responsible for, but that really understands its role as your companion, or in this example, I'm going to go ZocDoc, which in the US understands that the ordinary world of healthcare is a nightmare for the average American, and becomes a companion that transforms that experience for you.
Healthcare is broken. Patients are suffering from an antiquated healthcare system that doesn't work for them.
If you think about healthcare today, there are these very large interests. Insurers, health systems, pharmaceutical companies. What's different about ZocDoc is we generally represent the patient.
We created something that was just super fun and friendly and almost playful and joyful.
In any creative partnership, I think you're looking for a fresh perspective. But you want that perspective to also be very informed. And I think in our collaboration with Wolff Olins, we were able to find that balance really well.
One thing which I'm very excited about on this rebrand is that a stronger sense of visual identity is actually a business must for us going forward. open ourselves up this year and appear beyond just softdoc.com. And when we do that, we need to have some powerful assets that people recognize even when they're off our course cycle. The main goal for the redesign was to take our unique mission and to give it a visual form and to really stand out from the category where we believe that we are very different from healthcare.
The willingness to take risk on both Wolff Olins' part and ZocDoc's part, I think really paid off, and we really landed in a place that is great, surprising, different, and unlike anybody else in healthcare.
The rebrand is a chance for us to make visible what the healthcare experience should be for patients, which means make it easy for them to get what they need and make sure that access to healthcare is the least of their worries.
The demands of the hero's journey are tangible and practical. The notion of thinking of the customer as a hero, thinking of the user as a hero, is not some airy-fairy conceptual notion. The exact opposite. It forces you to think really carefully about the user experience and the role the brand plays in making that better. It informs the business model, because if you're a mentor, that's a really different kind of companion to a customer than if you're a cheerleader. And so it really is about actually thinking through in tangible terms what kind of experience we're trying to create for people. And if you think of the world's biggest problems, this kind of brand and this kind of notion that where there's a need, we can transform the person who has that need into the hero of the experience is a really strong thing. And a job of this that, for obvious reasons, and I'll talk about in a second, that is very personal to me, is our work with Olafur Eliasson on Little Sun. So I'll play a little film on this, and I might dance during this one. Tech, you might need to click again. So for me, as an African, I grew up in a small village in eastern Nigeria. Today it has intermittent electricity, but in the late 70s when I moved there, we didn't have electricity. So I understand kerosene fumes. And I understand how when needs and challenges that individuals have exist and are clear and articulated, how it leads to our creativity. Now, my first exposure to creativity, I always like to say, was in post-Civil War Nigeria, and I was from the part of the country that wanted to leave and lost the wars. As young men were rebuilding their lives, the easiest business they can get to was to fix up an old army vehicle and use it to turn it into a bus that drove from a provincial capital 40 miles that way with the local town 5 miles that way. And on the side of these buses, they would write what to me as a 6, 7-year-old were just these amazing lines like, "No condition is permanent for obvious reasons, no man is an island, the young shall grow." It was such an expression of creativity for me. And yet, as I've thought long and hard about creativity, I've realized that in that part of the world, creativity isn't something that you say some people have. It's for all of us. The word for creativity in the Igbo language is akonuche, but it's not an adjective. It's like saying brain. It's a human quality that we all have. And I think something unfortunate has happened to us in the Western world in the last 200 years, that we've talked about the creative and we've talked about everybody else, and so a few people are going to create what the whole use. In my opinion, if we deny people's creativity, we deny their humanity. And if we think that we can make finished brands and throw them on society, I think we're denying people's humanity. And I actually think in these days when everything from politics to social media is pushing us deeper and deeper into our individual buckets, that people who create brands have a real responsibility to do the hard work, not to depend on algorithms to understand the customers, because by the way, these are the same algorithms that brought down the financial system. But no, to do the real work, to go into people's lives and believe better things about people. I think failure to do this, failure to really engage with society, and you can see this happening in politics, means that people take alternatives, and many of those alternatives, and you can really see this in politics, will be put forward by fraudsters and charlatans, and that's not good for anybody. But if we can really think about brands as something that is genuinely done as a creative partnership with our users, where we are generous towards them, we trust them to create, then we can begin to have those kind of brands that Marina was talking about this morning, that are unpredictable, vibrant, full of life, that surprise us, the people who create those brands. Because ultimately, the epic doesn't belong to Homer, who wrote it. The epic doesn't belong to Zeus, who's the god in it. The epic belongs to Odysseus. And in the same way, the brands we create don't belong to us. They belong to the customers we're creating them for. And our only purpose as people who make brands has to be to make those people the heroes. Thank you very much.